When Eleanor Hartley, the youngest female CEO in Silicon Valley, stepped out of her black limousine that cold November morning, nobody could have guessed she was about to trade her designer heels for worn sneakers and a second-hand apron. To the world, she was the woman who built a billion-dollar tech empire from her college dorm room. But to herself, she was just tired. Tired of boardrooms full of men who underestimated her, tired of the endless meetings, and tired of realizing that all her success couldn't buy her something real, connection. So, when a chance encounter at a quiet cafe introduced her to Daniel, a struggling single father of two, everything changed. She had overheard him on the phone, begging a potential babysitter not to quit. His voice trembled not out of anger, but desperation. Please, I can't lose this job. My kids. And in that moment, something in Eleanor's heart cracked open. She had seen numbers, not people, for far too long. But this man, he reminded her of what humanity looked like. She approached him with a smile that hid her identity and said softly, I can help. I have experience with kids. It was a lie, unless one counted handling grown men in suits who acted like toddlers. Daniel looked at her skeptically, but when she offered to start immediately, he didn't hesitate. He couldn't afford to. And so began Eleanor's secret life as Ella, the nanny. Her first day was chaos. The house was small but full of warmth, crayon marks on the walls, laundry piles taller than she was, and laughter that echoed through every corner. Little Sophie, 6 years old, clung to Ella's hand like she'd known her forever. And Max, 9, tested every limit she had. You don't look like a nanny, he said. You look like someone from TV. She just smiled, brushing off his words. Days turned into weeks. Ella found herself waking up early to make pancakes, packing school lunches, and cheering at soccer games. She hadn't felt this alive in years. Daniel, meanwhile, was trying his best to balance his construction job and his kids, often coming home exhausted, covered in dust, but always with that kind smile. Slowly, Ella began to see what real strength looked like, not in billion-dollar deals, but in a father's quiet sacrifice. One evening, after a particularly rough day when the water heater broke and the kids had a meltdown over burnt mac and cheese, Daniel slumped onto the couch. Ella joined him, and for the first time, they really talked. He told her about his wife, who had passed away 3 years ago, about how he'd been doing everything alone since. Ella listened, not as a CEO, but as a woman who finally understood what love and loss truly meant. As she helped him fix the heater, grease on her hands, laughter filling the kitchen, Daniel looked at her and said, you've changed this house, Ella. You've brought light back into it. And she realized she didn't want to leave. But secrets have a way of surfacing. One afternoon, a news alert popped up on Daniel's old tablet. Eleanor Hartley named TechVision's Woman of the Year. Her photo filled the screen, smiling in a navy dress. Daniel froze. Eleanor, he whispered. Ella's heart sank. The truth was out. He didn't say much that night, just stared at her with hurt eyes. Why? He asked finally. Was this some kind of charity experiment for you? She tried to explain how she'd wanted to remember what being human felt like, how his family had given her more peace than her fortune ever could. But the damage was done. She left that night, tears streaming down her face, feeling like she'd lost something far more valuable than her company's worth. Weeks passed. Daniel tried to move on, but the house felt empty again. The kids missed Miss Ella. Even Max, who once swore she was weird, cried himself to sleep. Then one morning, a small envelope arrived at their doorstep. Inside was a letter and a deed to a brand new home near the ocean. The letter read, "This isn't charity. This is gratitude. You reminded me what love looks like. If you'll have me back, not as your nanny, but as Eleanor, I'd like to start again." Together, when Daniel showed up at her office weeks later, dressed in his best shirt, he didn't care about the guards or the luxury. He just looked at her and said, "Next time, you don't need to pretend to be anyone else. I liked you just the way you were." She smiled through her tears. "So did I." The two walked out of that building hand in hand, her billion-dollar empire behind her and a new life ahead. Because sometimes the richest hearts are found not in penthouses or private jets, but in small kitchens filled with laughter, burnt pancakes, and love that money can never buy.